The Chicago Bulls have 22 games left. 22 games. And not that the 22 games are going to save the season at all, but 22 games that help decide the Chicago Bulls' future. Who's staying? Who's gone? And whether this tank will actually mean something. We will find that all out in roughly 22 games. And today we're going to break it down exactly what we're watching over this stretch and how Billy Donovan has basically said he's ready to turn the keys over to Matas Buzelis under one circumstance. We'll talk about all that, plus dive into the mailbag right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Air Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. We already know the month of February, the Chicago Bulls did not win a single game near the month of February, even though coming into that, the Bulls were hovering right around 500. They've now dropped well below that. And there are 22 games left to be played now for the remainder of the season for the Chicago Bulls. The season does end April 12th, I believe, for the Chicago Bulls. So you're just over about 6 weeks away from the season ending completely and entirely for the Chicago Bulls. Now, with that said, the Bulls have if the Bulls do go 0-22 over this last stretch, which I do think is I know there are some Bulls fans that do think the Bulls aren't going to win a single game. I just think that would just be such a that would be 33 straight losses. If the Chicago Bulls lose, they're one of the longest losing streaks in NBA history that were to be the case. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the Bulls are going to do that. They're not going to go 0-22 over the rest of this stretch. But with that said, they're going to have a losing record. There's just no doubt about that, right? When it comes down to it for the Chicago Bulls team as well, this is about securing the future and also looking at which players are going to be in the Bulls' future as well. And when you look at that, it's really Josh Giddey, Matas Buzelis, Noa Essengue. We know those guys are absolutely going to be part of the Bulls' future. Now, to what level they're going to be part of the Bulls' future, we don't exactly know. Almost everything else in the roster is in flux. Even Tre Jones and Jalen Smith, players that were mentioned by Arturas Karnisovas as being part of the Bulls' core. I mean, who's to say that a team won't see the way that they have played this season and won't come calling for them, especially like Tre Jones with his role and what he's been able to do. Now, one could say that nobody really came calling for Tre Jones in free agency, so who's to say that, somebody is going to, come calling to trade assets for him now when they probably could have signed him for only part of their mid-level exception last summer. But then again, you just never know. His season ended in injury last year, so maybe he does, garner some type of trade interest. Jalen Smith as well. Everybody else is really in flux. And nobody else is really under contract. Like, yeah, Rob Dillingham's under contract. He'll probably be here on this Bulls team too because nobody's probably going to trade for him, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's a big part of the future. Patrick Williams is also going to be here because that's a damn near untradeable contract. But when I'm talking about part of the future, I mean part of what this team is looking at as key pieces that they're building towards now. And despite what some people like my brother Winton Manor will tell you, yes, Matas Buzelis is part of the Chicago Bulls future, and he should be. He the turn on Matas has been really weird, right? But even Tre Jones, Isaac Okoro, Jalen Smith, right? These guys that could have value to winning teams in some degree. Isaac Okoro, left the Cleveland Cavaliers. They sent him off. But then again, when you look at the fact of how Lonzo's gone since then, maybe they wish they would have just kept Isaac Okoro, even if he is just a backup bench wing defender. But there you go in there. Nick Richards, Anthony Simons, Colin Sexton, Zach Collins, Gershon Yabusele, all expiring contracts for the Chicago Bulls this year. And then you have those guys that are in limbo. I think Rob Dillingham, Leonard Miller, these guys are both they have contracts for next year potentially. Leonard Miller has a team contract. Jaden Ivey is a restricted free agent as well. Those guys have a chance of coming back. It really depends on what the Bulls do in the draft. I think is really going to determine their appetite for bringing those guys back, a combination of those guys, and we'll see what's going to happen here. The last 22 games is really for evaluation of who and what's going to stay on this roster. And that's just the reality of it, right? Jaden Ivey hasn't been 100%. We don't know if they're going to extend him a qualifying offer. They could and then rescind it if they need that cap space for something else. It really depends on that. But it really comes down to looking at the young players. And Billy Donovan had a quote in regards to Matas Buzelis. We'll also talk about Noa Essengue, who's back on the court as well for the Chicago Bulls, practicing and rehabbing. But Billy Donovan said this in regards to Matas Buzelis. I think he's learning and understanding what are the things to go into winning and what he has to be responsible for. I feel like there has been big growth in that area from a year ago. I think his evolution as a player from where he was a year ago to where he is now, he's obviously done a lot more with basketball in his hands than he did previously. So I think he's going to have a great base to work with. I think he can continue to evolve and get better. Goes on to say he's got to be a two-way player. All of these guys have to be two-way players. They have got to play both sides of the floor. I think he's been better using his length. His shot blocking has been way up there this year from where it was a year ago. I do think there are times where physically he just needs more strength to hold up when he's gone up against bigger and stronger players. I know some people have issues with some things Billy Donovan does and says, especially when it comes to Matas Buzelis. Bulls fans have been very protective over Matas Buzelis, rightfully so, and I understand so. But I think that Billy Donovan has the right mindset. Matas does have to be a two-way player. If you really want to be a leader as much as Matas says, you have to impact both sides of the basketball. And block shots don't equal good defense. I think that's something that we also have to – it equals rim protection, but you can be a solid shot blocker but not a good on-ball defender. Now, Matas is taking growth in steps in those areas. I mean, everything points towards it. When you look at the analytics, there was a graph that came out the other day that actually said that on ball, Matas Buzelis has actually turned to one of the better on-ball defenders in basketball. Now, it doesn't always feel like that, and I don't know what the delineation is between there, but that's why stats, you always want to look at stats and pair that with the eye test, not just stats and analytics by themselves. You always want to pair it with something. But Matas is definitely taking steps up, right? He's taking steps in the right direction. You just have to see him go further. For example, Matas Buzelis, players that he's guarding are shooting right now almost 2.8% worse. Now, that's not great, right? You're not looking at that as a lockdown defender, but that is solid. Also, when he's on the court, opponents are scoring 3 points less per 100 possessions, whereas last year was 2.3. So there is some legitimate steps that have happened there in the right direction for Matas Buzelis. There's just no way around there. There's steps there that have happened there. The opposing team's rebounding rate goes down when he's on the court. The free throw rate goes down when he's on the court. Those type of things. So there are some things that point towards Matas is taking a little bit of step. I think Billy Donovan has really brought it together. If Matas is going to be a four, which I have my doubts, especially with Noa Essengue, we'll see what we do. If we do get lucky and draft my number one guy and AJ DeBonsa to this team, then I think Matas is going to have to be a four. But with that said, he's going to have to add strength, and that happens over time. Players don't add a bunch. Like, look at Kevin, and that's why I'm not mad. Like, Kevin Durant played shooting guard almost his first 2 years in the league, then moved to small forward the majority of his career. Now he plays more power forward than small forward. So, like, Matas is a similar wiry frame like Kevin Durant. So I wasn't expecting him to make some huge muscle leap. I think he added, 6 to 8 pounds of muscle this offseason, lean muscle, and he's doing it correctly, whether like Patrick Williams bulked up all heavily quickly, and it affected his speed and stuff and his athleticism. Matas wants to maintain that athleticism. So I don't know if Matas is ever going to, be like that huge physical presence, but how he deals with the strength and those type of things are going to be, a big part for him. So you're seeing Matas make those steps in the right direction. Billy Donovan has to put him in better situations. Now that goes down to coaching. Billy as a coach, I have my issues with. I'm always going to have my issues and errors with Billy Donovan as a head coach in basketball. But I think we need to see that. Now, Josh Giddey needs to be better too. We know that he's coming back from injury. He has not been himself since coming back from that injury at all, which has been very evident and loud, and we need Josh Giddey to be more like him, especially next year. This year, it's not focused on winning, right? So it is what it is there. But Matas does have to, and I agree with Billy Donovan in Matas needing to improve in those areas as a player and continually grow. He's been much better off ball as well this year. That goes to the three-point shooting. I do want to see him take more on-ball opportunities too with that. So he can get better as a player, and he will continue to get better as a player. Matas Buzelis isn't nearly the finished product of himself. And, that's why when people like Alt Von, not Savon, which is my brother, but Alt Von is what I call him, when he calls in and he's so harsh on Matas, I think you got to look at, Matas' second year is right up there with Franz. Like players like that, right? And not to say that those are players that you're like, oh my God, they're absolutely franchise level talent on every roster, but there is a player that is a big part of what you can build towards and looking towards that. So, and better second year, well ahead of where Jalen Johnson was in his second year as well. So Matas has a nice base to jump off of and use this offseason if he focuses and attacks it. And that's really what I want to see. And there's no reason to think he won't. Matas Buzelis basically stayed at the Advocate Center every day last year. And he's from Chicago. So, like, that's naturally he's going to do those things. And that's where we can continue to see that growth from Matas Buzelis. One of the players as well that is going to have a role next year is Noa Essengue. And Noa Essengue is back on the court for the Chicago Bulls. Not playing. He's not going to play any games this year, but he was in practice. He did some individual work as my light goes out. That's crazy. That's not even the one that was dead before we started. He does some individual work there. He did some individual work. He got some shots up, and that's really good. This is why they opted for Noa Essengue to have his surgery when he had it, is because it allowed him to have a full offseason. So if Noa Essengue is already getting shots back up on the court, which is really good. He's already getting shots back up. He's getting on the court, doing some slight things. He's still, he's without a sling, which is really good. That's really good to have. That means he's going to be able to have a full offseason. That means they're going to be able to train him, everything this offseason. He's been sidelined since December, right? And so he only was in 2 games. That is what it is. He played 6 minutes over those 2 games. So, it wasn't a lot that we got to see from Noa Essengue, but he's going to be able to fully attack this offseason, and he needs to do that. Noa Essengue has to, in my personal opinion, I know not everybody's going to share it, he has to be a player that's in the rotation next year, but he has to earn it, right? I'm not somebody who thinks you just hand players minutes and boom. They have to earn it. So I'm looking at what he's going to look at what he does in training camp in the offseason, all those type of things to get himself ready, because Noa Essenge's development is something that's hugely important for this Bulls team, especially a team that's now going younger with their own picks. And if they get a second one from Portland, they're going to have young players that they're focused on developing. Noa Essengue has to show himself to be a level of that and be willing to be part of that and earning a role to be part of that. So it's good to hear that Noa Essengue is back on the court for the Chicago Bulls as well. With that said, it is Sunday. That means it is mailbag day here. We got 3 voicemails that we're going to get into today. This first one that we're going to get into, this one is from Shay.
Yo, hey, this Shay. Let me explain something to these dumbass fans that think tanking is a good thing. And yeah, I called you dumbass fans that like to think tanking, losing is a good thing. The reason why losing is not a good thing is because one of the main reasons is when you have a guy like Matas Buzelis, who's pretty young and in his second year, he doesn't necessarily know what he needs to work on. And by winning, making the playoffs, and probably losing and getting bounced out, he's going to think to himself, hey, probably didn't have a good playoff experience because that's like my first experience, but also I know what I need to work on in the off season to make myself a lot better. You know what I'm saying? The speed moves up a little bit. Players have different mentalities once making the playoffs. Hell, look at Josh Giddey. He's a winning player, but he just doesn't have a good team to work with. Case in point, look at how Jimmy Butler was able to take steps every single year when he was with the Bulls. Now, I know I'm not trying to compare players, but I'm trying to compare winning here, Hayes. When you win, it lets you know what you need to do to get better. How do you think Derrick Rose went from being bounced out the playoffs in the first round, the first 2 years of his career, to ended up becoming the MVP his first season? I know Derrick Rose is a different player, and I'm not comparing him, but I'm comparing winning. Winning lets you know what you need to do better, especially when you are bounced out of a playoff round. Because it lets you know, hey, in order for this team to take a next step, like making the conference finals or making a finals or maybe winning, I need to be better in this area. I need to get better in this area. And let me tell you something. Losing does not help that. Hell, look at LaMelo Ball. He's been losing so much to the point where everybody is even questioning whether he's a star or not because of his team. That's all I got to say. Anyway, tell me what you think, because I know these dumbass fans will. The tanking ones, at least. Peace, Hayes.
Like I said earlier, right? I've said this, like my episode a couple was the toll of losing. There is a toll of losing that comes with losing at the rate that the Chicago Bulls are. Young players' mindsets, their mentality can be affected, those type of things. That's why I don't want to see a multi-year tank. I do not want to see that. I think when you tank for multiple years and then all of a sudden try to flip the gear to, all right, now we're going to try to start winning, it's kind of more difficult for players to do that. You want to be competing. You don't want to be trying to lose the most games every single season. And I don't think that's going to be us. But there is a total losing. And I think we're seeing that a little bit. We're seeing the frustration. We're seeing that we're not really playing development ball, right? We're not doing those type of things. I've always fought against the thought process that some people have where it's like, get rid of everybody else. We got this young player we need to develop. Let's get rid of X player so that player can get 22 shots a game. I don't think that's real development. You want a player to develop in structure. You want a player to develop and have to play a role in their development so that way they know how to play, regardless of the caliber of players on the roster. That way they know how to play off guys, right? That way they know how to actually fit within a role, how they know how to play basketball, right? You want people to do that. Just throwing players out there and saying, all right, bet we have nobody else on the roster. Boom, go get your 22 shots, develop that way. That's how you lead to players that once you do make that gear of winning or once you do build a more solid team, they may not know how to play with those guys, right? So that's why I think it's important to be able to do that early on into a player's career, regardless of where your roster is. You want to have players that force the player to play, to develop within structure. And, we'll see that. Now, the structure that Billy Donovan provides, that's a different thing, right? But you always want players to develop in structure. That's always been my mindset. I think that's when you look around the NBA, that's not to say that there are some players that develop really well with being the guy early on and maybe just not winning a lot of games. But I want to see my players develop in structure. I want to have a roster that actually, when you look at it, you may say, hey, this roster isn't that good, but it makes sense that, okay, but we're running this type of scheme and it makes sense because we have players that fit this mold, right? That's what I look at it. And, we'll see what the Bulls end up doing with it, what comes out of it for these young players, but we'll see. Let's get into this next voicemail, man. This one's from Reggie.
What's up, Hayes? This is Russell. Just calling in. I know it's been a minute, but when I look at this Bulls team and what type of future they have, I really can't see much of anything going on that's good for them. When I look at who's going to have a better career after the Bulls, Io, Kobe, I'm obviously going to say Io because he's a two-way player who always has the mindset of I'm going to get better no matter what. If my shot's not falling, it doesn't matter. I'm going to play defense. If I'm not, doing things defensively, I'm going to facilitate. There's always some way he's going to try to help out on the court. So that's just what I see from Io. Unfortunately, Kobe has a history of having injuries, slow him down at the worst time. This year's no exclusion. And when you talk about whether or not this team can rebuild, I don't think it can with AK or Billy Donovan. AK is always gonna, make if not the worst call, he's going to make a decision that's leaves you scratching your head. He's not someone who can take 3-4 moves ahead in order to get the best results. I'm looking at, he's talking about, getting guys in free agency in 2026. Remember what the Bulls have to do to get DeMar DeRozan. Teams won't even offer him a big deal. He was getting offered a mid-level extension. The Bulls had to pay more than double to get him. And I don't think that situation has changed. No, I don't think any guy who wants to win a championship is going to look at Chicago as a place to go. And we've seen what he does in trades, that he's not capable of, landing players who can contribute to winning immediately. I mean, it's sad to see that this Bulls team is just stuck. And as for Billy Donovan, I don't trust him to develop players. I don't trust him to make adjustments in game to put the Bulls in the best position to win. You have problems from the roster to the coaching staff to the front office to the ownership. And it's going to be a dark time for the Bulls, for Bulls fans. So,
I think DeMar DeRozan was a lot different situation. I don't think you can really compare free agency to DeMar. The Bulls had no cap space. I think people forget that offseason we got Lonzo, Alex Caruso, and DeMar DeRozan. The Bulls went into that offseason with no cap space. That's why we had to operate so many signing trades. That's why we had to give up first-round picks. That's why we had to give up some of the deals that we got, because on top of not being a winning team, we didn't have cap space either. So I think that was just a little bit different of a situation, right? They overpaid for DeMar, but it wasn't because other teams were outbidding him. It's because, you had to pay DeMar to come to this team that hadn't done shit, right? So, and that part is going to stay the same. That's why they will have to overpay in restricted free agency if they want a Walker Kessler or Peyton Watson to kind of deter those teams from matching those deals, and that's there. But let's not act like the Chicago Bulls haven't also signed reasonable contracts. Alex Caruso's deal was a really reasonable and value contract. So was Andre Drummond's. Jalen Smith's on a really reasonable and fair contract. We signed Trey Jones to a really reasonable and team-friendly contract. So we've done that before too. And the balance this offseason is going to be important in how we balance that all out, and we'll see what they're able to do. But it does come down to the specific player that you're targeting, their situation with their team, especially if they're a restricted free agent. And those things are going to matter if you can get those guys and pry them away from their team. And we'll see what the Chicago Bulls can do with that this offseason, Reggie. But great voicemail. All right, let's get into this last voicemail, man. This one's from Ricky Carroll.
This is Ricky Carroll. When I was sitting and watching the game tonight, I have never, and yet I have seen it before, but Billy ripped them kids hard out tonight. And y'all boy Giddey, he telegraphed every pass. I'm talking about not just some of them. Every pass that he get in his hand, and he gets stuck. He telegraphed. Patrick Williams is a cancer. What was the first time he touched the ball, he turns it over 4 times, and you know something? You see players every once in a while say, "Damn, they don't give a damn." And what do you mean by that? Is that it's coaches. They don't give a damn. But it don't say nothing. But he would snatch one of them kids out. If they don't shoot a damn 3, they go to the basket and lay it up. I've been talking about this guy for about the last 3 years, and I have. He is terrible, man. AK, with this Patrick Williams stuff, it's terrible, man. I mean, how do you play for a coach that you know he wants you to lose? And he get on TV and talk that shit like it's a player's fault. That's gotta be heartbreaking, man. I've been in many, many championship games. It can be checked. Chicago Pintos in Chicago. And I sit there and I have seen bad coaches. I have never seen them like this. And I don't care how many job picks that they have. They ain't gonna do no good. Cause AK will pass over them and probably go draft 2 guards right behind each other. So just wanted to say that. They got cancer on their team. They can't win. The Chicago Bulls are the oldies of basketball. By low, good quality. It's terrible, man. It's terrible. Billy needs to go, and he might not. So, that's about it. Peace.
I don't get the point, the argument with Giddey there. Like you say that Giddey wants all the passes. Like, I mean, he's a point guard. So yeah, he's going to want to pass the ball. Like, I don't see that as a problem for somebody who's one of the best facilitators in the game of basketball. But the P. Will thing is spot on. Like, and get back to Josh Giddey. Josh Giddey does have to be better. He's not been good since his injury return. He does have to be better, and we need better from him, especially we need what we saw at the beginning of the season from Josh Giddey for the entirety of this year, of next season. And then as far as P. Will's cooked. P. Will's cooked. Like I've said, we had the voicemail yesterday when it's like, oh my God, we can get P. Will and get him to play better, and then we can try to move. I'm done with that with P. Will. P. Will is just not a good basketball player. It's the mentality of P. Will. He has all the talent in the world when you look at raw talent, but it's just the mentality of P. Will. And I just don't know if that's going to change anytime. Now, maybe P. Will matures in the offseason. Maybe he comes back better. I don't know, right? I won't say that it's not possible for him to improve, but I'm just at my wit's end with expecting any type of improvement from P. Will, if that makes sense, right? As far as Billy Donovan, you know how I feel about Billy Donovan. Billy Donovan needs to be gone. I'd replace him with Chris Quinn right now, day one, and be fine with that. But this front office, they have an affinity for him. They're never going to let him go. It is what it is there. That's just the reality of it. So, but, shout out to Ricky Carroll for leaving that voicemail there. But that's it for today's episode, man. This final 22 games are about clarity. It's not about wins. It's not about fake hope. It's not about playing dreams for the first time in a while. It's about clarity. How much does Matas improve from now to the end of the season? And what does that look like jumping off into next year? Is Jaden Ivey worth a qualifying offer? Is Rob Dillingham closer to chaos or potential, right? That's what you're looking for. And does Billy Donovan actually buy into this rebuild and stay around? The record is what it is. Now it's about the evolution and what the next step is for this team heading into next offseason. Drop your thoughts in the comments down below. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel as well. You can follow us at Bulls Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullscentralpod@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.